Hello modelers, welcome to a review of Revell's 1969 Boss Mustang 302 kit. I just recently completed this and I'll go over everything with you, show you the high and low points, and explain how it went together. I want to start by telling you my building philosophy. I generally build these kits pretty much straight out of the box with no added extras. I don't wire the engines or do anything like that, so whatever you see here should be able to be duplicated by the average builder at home. And you'll notice on this one that there are a couple of parts I've left off. The rear spoiler and the rear window louvers. I decided that if I'm going to have this car as my own, I probably would not have ordered those two things. They were options on the car when they were new. So while I have painted them and everything, I did not affix them to the cars. I prefer the more plain look. So we'll talk about the color on this car first of all. I wanted to paint this car a kind of grabber orange color. I was at the hobby shop when I bought this and looked through the available colors for Boss Mustangs, and I thought, wow, grabber orange would look great. And I think it does. I think it looks really good. I think it pops well with the black trim. There's only one problem you real Mustang guys will realize. 1969, you couldn't get grabber orange. It's a 1970 color. And I didn't realize that until after I'd already put some paint on the chassis, but decided to make it just a what-if car. If you could get grabber orange in 69, this is what it would look like. And the color I painted it was Tamiya paint. The color code was this TS56 Brilliant Orange. This is the first time I've used Tamiya paint. The hobby shop suggested that I use their Fine Surface Primer, which is a white primer, which I've never used before. When I first painted the car, I just said, the heck with that. I painted it with a regular gray primer that I have, that I use most of the time, and then painted the Tamiya color over that, which did not work at all. It covered, it adhered to the primer perfectly well. The problem was that that orange is very transparent. And even after multiple coats, I was still getting dark primer showing through beneath the color coat. So I sanded it down and put the white primer on over top of that, sprayed it again, and voila, almost instantly I got this finish. So you definitely want to use Tamiya's white primer with their light colors. It is a really nice primer, by the way. The hobby shop did not steer me wrong on that. It sands very well, sprays nice, and so on. I was disappointed with the orange when I first sprayed it for that reason, that it wasn't covering very well, despite multiple coats, but you use the right product and it works properly. So much for my Krylon. So let's start looking at this thing in detail and see what we got. So first we'll talk about the interior because that's the hardest to see. The car is a Boss 302 with a manual transmission. It is a one-piece body tub. The console is molded in. The dashboard, steering wheel, shifter, and the two front seats are separate. Everything else is one piece. The body tub and a lot of the kit is also shared with the Shelby Mustang kit of the same vintage. And it does have the provision for and includes in the kit the roll bar that goes right behind the front seats. It's just a simple hoop. And the attachment points for that are located inside the interior. You can't see them really because it's black here, but if you're painting your car a lighter color, I don't know if we can see it through here or not. Probably not. But if you're going to paint your interior light color, you may want to do some more machining to get rid of that stuff on the inside if it bothers you. You really can't see it with this black, so I didn't worry about it. The decal sheet comes with wood grain decals for that spot there in the center console, as well as the instrument panel. To try to get for you here, but I don't know if we can. Black interior just does not work too well with our lighting that we've got. And there's also one there. You can kind of see it a little bit. Not very well. And the door trim panels also should have a wood grain section on them, and you can see that one poking out over there. The door panel ones are really nice. The ones that go on the dashboard, not in love with. It takes a lot of solve set and some real careful fiddling to get them to fit, especially around the dash gauges. I did get them to sit down pretty well eventually, and from outside the car with it together, you can't really tell if there's any issue with it, but it was a challenge. If I was going to do this kit again, I'd probably just paint those pieces. They do give you a lot of decals for details. You get a little prancing horse for the center of the steering wheel. You get a little Mustang badge for on the glove box that goes on top of where the wood grain part is. I wish I could show you that in there. You also get little pony decals for the center caps. And we'll go under the hood now. And we get additional decals under here for the air cleaner, 2 different ones, fan caution, and they even give you one that you probably can't see too well from here, but for the oil filter. Pretty remarkable. The engine bay is decently detailed. The battery is molded in. There is a separate brake booster and master cylinder. The radiator is molded in, sort of, kinda. There are some separate pieces, like the tank top is separate with the horns, and the fan shroud is separate. It's got an engine with decent detail on it. The distributor has the vacuum advance. There's a separate coil. It's got the riser tube from the exhaust manifold that goes up to the air cleaner. The oil filter housing is actually pretty accurate. The timing cover in the front has, I don't think we'll be able to see it, but it's actually got a separate paintable fuel pump. So the engine detail is pretty good. The carburetor is actually pretty sexy too, but you put the air cleaner on, you can't see it. But it's pretty nice. Engine detail is, firewall detail is a little lacking. It's pretty much just a flat firewall. Oh, you also do get a decal for the shock tower, like the original. So that works out pretty well. I'm pretty happy with the engine in this car. And we'll flip it upside down and look at the bottom. And here's the undercarriage of our Boss 302. The rear axle and springs are all together as one molding item. The fuel tank is integral with the floor pan. Exhaust system is 2 pieces. I think the muffler is in 2 halves. The front suspension is all one giant molded piece. So the detail is moderately okay. I mean, I picked out some things with paint there. It doesn't look bad, but it's not comprised of many pieces. There are separate shock absorbers, both front and back. And one builder's note: when you install the wheels onto these little stub axles, they just snap on so that they can spin freely. It's just kind of a nice design, but you'll want to put those on before you put the axles onto the chassis. Some of them are very firm. It takes a real firm snap to get them to go in, and if you're not careful, you can bend or break the suspension parts, so be aware of that. One note on this particular kit: this gap over here is probably builder induced from when I was painting the body shell. I had it on something that didn't really fit over too well, and I think I distorted it slightly there. So I'm going to be gluing that together with some super glue. We'll hold that, but I didn't want to bust open a fresh tube of super glue just to do that one spot. So I'm going to wait till I need it again, and then we'll get that gap gone. It does go together fully. It's not too bad, but that's my fault. I don't think that's a fault of the kit. One thing I'm not terribly wild about is this interior tub is separate from the rest of the chassis floor pan. That's not really, I don't really like that. I don't think it looks that great. There is the copyright stamped into the lower sill there, which You know, a good builder would have ground that off, but I didn't. And here's the underside of the engine and transmission. Engine and trans are cast as one piece. This is my first attempt at trying to do the overspray thing in the underside. It's not really accurate, but I thought I'd give it a try. It turned out looking okay, but I should have more body color along the outside here. Alright, we'll flip her back up on the wheels again. A few builder's notes on the engine bay. The fan shroud and fan, when you go to put the engine in, that's a little fiddly. It's kind of got to come in from the bottom and slide into the fan shroud. It's a little awkward how it goes together. I want to test fit that first. The upper radiator hose is a little bit too long in my build, so I had to trim it back just a bit, and getting that in is a little squirrely too, but it's not terrible. It's just something to be aware of. The shock tower braces, I'm not sure that they fit properly over the shock towers. When they reach the firewall, it seems like they don't really sit like flat like they should. It just might be me, but those are really the only gripes I had with building any of that. The hood, the hinges have little protuberances on the sides where you can kind of snap it in so that the hood won't fall out again. I was taking the hood off and on several times during the build, and I just got tired of them. I didn't feel they were helpful, so I just snagged them off there. You can see where that one was. And now the hood just slides in. Much easier to deal with. The fit of the hood is pretty good overall. I have a little bit of a problem here in this front corner where it doesn't quite want to seat. It seems to be worse today than it was yesterday, so I don't know if it's temperature related. But I did shave the sides of the hood down a little bit and got a slightly better fit there. The front and rear fascias, the front's kind of a problem. If you spent more time on it, you can see that in this view it looks really bad because I'm up close to it. But when it's just sitting on the shelf, it doesn't look too bad. It does fit reasonably well, but if you're a more fussy builder, you're just going to want to spend a little bit more time on that, at least to get the gaps even. This side isn't too bad, but the passenger side on this one just didn't really want to go together too well. I had that clamped together and it still isn't quite right. That one actually was the easier one to put on. The back one fits really well, but it's miserable to try to get it to glue because it comes into the back of the car from the bottom and then it sits and glues up behind the trunk lid where it says Mustang. And so you're trying to hold that in place. You really want to install this back panel prior to putting the floor panel in the car, because otherwise you really don't have any way to get any tension in there and hold that in place. The decals in this are really pretty nice. The only gripe I have with them is that they're really thin, so when you slide them off, especially these side ones, I would do these last. You got to be very careful with them that you don't tear them. I did not, but they are a little bit difficult to work with. I used a photo of a real car for reference to try to get the location right. They also give you striping here for the back, and they give you this blackout stripe for the trunk lid. What they do not give you is anything for the hood, and I'll show you what they do give you here in just a second. Alright, so these are the decals that you get to do the hood and the hood masking. This is one half, obviously. There's a companion that goes on the other side. What I did not like about these is you are supposed to paint the black on the hood, and then these are supposed to overlay the edge. Now, what you'll go and see if you look at another video like HPI Guy's workshop, he's built this kit and he put those on and it gives you kind of a two-tone effect on the stripes. If it's a custom build, it looks kind of nice. if you're trying to duplicate factory, I don't think it's going to look right at all. My idea was to paint the black on and then just cut out the narrow striping and use that around the edge. And that's going to be really fiddly, but it's possible to do it. Two reasons I didn't bother doing that. One is, when I mask the hood, I have square edges at the corners, which I didn't really think about until I was done with it. But if you notice the decals, they have rounded corners. And trying to make that look right is going to be almost impossible. The other problem I had when I started to look at these decals was how wavy they are. I'm not sure if that would straighten out or not once you put it on the car. I wasn't willing to take the risk and try it, so I said, the heck with that. So is that a gripe with the kit or not, that you don't get hood striping in black? Well, yes and no. Personally, I was rather annoyed by that I actually had to sit here and tape off and mask the black, but they're still giving me stripes to do it anyway. But having done the Revell Shelby GT350 kit and having a miserable time trying to put the stripes on the hood of that because of the bulge and the scoop, I'm thinking that a black decal for the hood of this probably would not have gone on any better. So instead, if you're going to build this kit, I would just go ahead and assume that you're going to have to stripe it and paint it black like I did here at a minimum. You could also just run it back and do the trunk lid too. That's very easy to mask that off because there's body lines there. Easier than doing the hood. They do give you kind of a template you can cut out, but I wouldn't use it for the actual masking. I would only use it for the measurements. So what I did to mask this off was not masking tape. That's a mistake in my opinion. Masking tape is too thick and it allows too much bleed under on something that you need a tight seal with. So what I use is automotive pinstriping. I've got a roll of this from a car I'd had years ago, and it's a lifetime supply. But what's nice about this is these things adhere really well. You can use them as masking for fine lines like that, and you won't get bleed under. You peel off the backing paper, and I actually cut these stripes in half so it was just the one color, and laid that down, and then put masking tape on top of that, just a little bit back from the edge, and it worked great. These do stick really well though, so you have to remember to leave some excess hanging off the edge so you can get it and pull it off when the paint's dry. But that's what I use to mask to get really nice tight fine lines, and as you can see on this one, it worked out really well. I didn't really have any blow by or bleed through anywhere. That's just as it came off, so use that if that helps you. So what do we think of this kit? Well, actually I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars, honestly. I think it's a very good representation of the right car. It's reasonably accurate. There are a couple things that it kind of has to deal with being a kit that's more than one version. And the biggest thing that you're going to have to deal with is on the C-pillars. This car is molded to have the round emblem there like the Mach 1s have. I don't know why they did that. I don't think it's even really necessary for the Mach 1 version if that's what it's for. But you're going to have to sand that off and use a little filler on that if you want to get rid of it. I rarely do body modifications with filler, but I did it on this car because I wanted to get those away, and so that's something you're going to have to deal with. The rear valance doesn't really fit too well. Probably a more experienced guy could have messed with that a little bit longer, but I didn't really have the patience to deal with it, so that's what it is. You get decals for the side marker lights, which is kind of nice. The rear view mirror for the windshield sits on a little post, and it's kind of hard to see here, but that's a real funky thing to try to get on properly without making a mess. In this video shot, it looks pretty horrible there in my windshield. It actually isn't that visible in real life, but you got to glue it to that little pin there. I would probably use a clear glue if possible. I've got model railroad stuff here that I use. This stuff is it's kind of like almost like an Elmer's glue, but it's way better. And that's what I use to glue in all kinds of clear parts. It works great to do these clear headlight lenses. You just put a little dab in the corners, and that way you don't lose the reflector part in the back, so they wind up looking pretty good. They do give you turn signals down here below the bumper that are chrome. Wish they hadn't done that. I'd have been happier with something I could put a decal on maybe. But I think this car, the proportions all look right, and for the most part, except for the fascias, it really went together quite well. Well, I do want to mention that there was decals for the Mustang lettering in the back. I wound up just painting them because I didn't know how the individual letters would look on the raised emblems that you get on the body casting. You can do either, obviously, but they give you license plates for it, and I mean it's really a pretty nice kit. The interior is a little sparse on detail, but if you're painting it a dark color like most of these Bosses were, you're probably not going to really see it anyway. So if you're a fussier builder than I am, you're going to have to do some work with the front and rear fascias, a little bit of work to make the hood fit better. I would also probably recommend that you pin the side view mirrors because there really isn't very much holding those on if you glue them. But aside from those little gripes, I think that this is a really nice looking kit. It makes a very nice model, and I'm quite pleased with it. So there you go. That's the Revell 69 Boss 302 Mustang. Hopefully that is helpful to you. Look forward to speaking to you again. Please check out my other Ford model kit videos.